Ty, we're live. We're live. We're live. We're live. We're live.
We are live.
Boom. There it is.
That didn't take long, did it?
No, not at all, man.
Man.
Not at all. And I guess that's sort of why Jack Swarbrick in his press conference is like, we're not naming an interim. Because he was going to name a head coach the next day, I guess.
I guess. That really, the speed with which they decided on Marcus Freeman maybe isn't a great surprise. But I think it's a little bit of a surprise if you watched the presser just yesterday morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
He seemed to be emphasizing the fact that he would take as long as he needed to in order to find the right guy, that there wasn't really any great rush to name a guy. Maybe they knew all along who their guy was going to be.
Right.
But then, of course, the playoff announcement came out last night, which I also found very interesting. And they asked, in no uncertain terms, Gary Barta, the designated sacrificial lamb for the College Football Playoff Committee, do you consider this with Notre Dame, with the coach leaving? And he rightfully, it wasn't like his decision, but there is a clause in the bylaws of the College Football Playoff Committee that they can factor stuff like this in. So a guy getting hurt, a coach leaving, they can factor all of these outside things in when it comes to actually ranking teams. And I don't know if that provided any impetus. I doubt it, knowing Swarbrick. He's not reactive like that. He's a pretty sharp guy.
Right.
But it's, I guess, both a little surprising and not all that surprising that they would move pretty quickly now, as Notre Dame could find its way into the playoff, and they've made it official. They have named Marcus Freeman as the next head football coach at Notre Dame. The other important bit of news is that Tommy Rees is going to stay on as offensive coordinator. Just a short while ago, he went in front of the team. The video made its way onto Twitter. Tommy Rees is pretty fired up to be staying at Notre Dame. So a lot of news here. We have to stop meeting like this, Dan. This has been the third stream in less than a week.
Yeah.
But Marcus Freeman is 35. Marcus Freeman came over at the start of the year from Cincinnati.
Holy hell, you're 5 years older than Notre Dame's head coach?
Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Whoa.
And Tommy Rees is 29. So it's a bit of a youth movement in South Bend at the moment, which I think in and of itself is sort of a big deal.
Sure.
As you have often poked fun at on this show, Notre Dame isn't something necessarily associated with like a younger brand. So
sure,
to maybe make this move now to go to Marcus Freeman, go Tommy Rees, it's definitely a youth movement. What are your thoughts here, Dan?
Well, first of all, I think we should just set base camp, right? Set like, okay, Marcus Freeman was Ohio State linebacker, I believe, national champion, and then Luke Fickell's defensive coordinator up until January, December. Like, he has been a Power 5 defensive coordinator for less than a year. And as I was texting with Jeff Schwartz about this, Jeff's point was like, good for him. That's a hell of a come up to go from the American Conference as a defensive coordinator to Notre Dame's defensive coordinator to head coach of this extraordinarily major and historic program within 11 and a half months whenever he was hired. It's an extraordinary leap for Marcus Freeman. Not saying it's bad. I'm saying that is impressive. Given what he was able to do as a defensive coordinator. You look at the back half of what Notre Dame's schedule looked like defensively. I mean, even the full season. I think there were some fits and starts early on with the defense, getting the hang of things. Just from an insider perspective.
For sure there were. Absolutely.
But eventually it looked like the team, from what I could tell, and you can speak to this more, really seemed to get into a groove defensively and understand assignments and play with more confidence than they were early on in the season. And I think everybody hailed the hire when he was hired as a defensive coordinator as obvious and terrific, right? That he is this, Midwestern, great recruiter, and has been lights out as a recruiter. Has he not been for Notre Dame?
Been lights out. Yeah. He has, I think, been widely credited with taking the recruiting operation at Notre Dame to the quote unquote next level.
Okay.
Right. And that was, I thought, one of the other tells in the Swarbrick press conference. He kept mentioning things like that. I'm not blind to recruiting. I'm not blind to just little things that would indicate that recruiting was certainly going to be a big part of the decision here. Anyway, continue.
No, I was going to say, somebody, a commenter, JP, just mentioned Notre Dame is retaining, what's the strength coach's name? Ballas?
Ballas, yeah, Matt Ballas.
Yeah, Matt Ballas, which is always enormous, right? As we know, and people will talk about, his strength coach spends more time with the team than the head coach, just in that day-to-day, the discipline, the making sure everybody's showing up on time to places, and obviously working with weight training and off-season workouts. So for continuity's sake, both Tommy Rees sticking around and is it Matt Ballas sticking around?
Right.
It's a big deal. I'm not the biggest at the moment Tommy Rees fan, but if he has shown enough at this early age to, I mean, Notre Dame's offenses have been good. I just worry about the ceiling. But if he's doing that at 29, what does he look like?
Well, here's the thing, and that's just
right.
It, right? I think there's a reason, and we talked on the podcast about how maybe right now in this very moment, early December 2021, there are other options, other better options that Brian Kelly could go out and get at LSU. But I think the reason that he wanted him, the reason that Notre Dame wants him, obviously at Notre Dame, there's a continuity aspect to it. But there seems to be a pretty strong sentiment throughout the coaching world that Tommy Rees is going to be one of these hot up and coming assistants.
Sure.
You know, before long, somebody who gets his own program within the next 5 years. It might not be at the level of a Notre Dame, but it's going to be somewhere. And he is very highly regarded. I think the impression is that he is getting better at being an offensive coordinator. Remember, when they had the opportunity to name him offensive coordinator a couple of years ago, it was kind of on thin ice there for a bit. It seemed that Notre Dame wanted to find some way to retain him, and it was a risk to give him that job when he was still really young, still very green. I think it's, the kids love playing for him, which I think is half the battle. And the offense has improved. You know, there's been noted improvement throughout the course of the season. So if this small sample size in 2021 has been any indication, Rees is the real deal. So that was actually the news that broke first. When it came out that Tommy Rees was staying as offensive coordinator, my first thought was it has to be Marcus Freeman. It has to be Marcus Freeman because Luke Fickell is not going to relocate his family of 8 over.
I mean, Marcus Freeman has a bunch, by the way, 2022 fantasy thing. Luke Fickell.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I guess Marcus Freeman has a lot of children now that he's a head coach. That's going to be known even more as well. Yeah.
But why would Luke Fickell want to relocate, want to leave a really good spot and join up with an offensive coordinator that he couldn't pick on his own?
True.
Like that just didn't really mesh for me. So as soon as I heard that, I knew it was going to be Freeman. You know, if you listen to what a lot of the kids have said about Freeman, they love playing for him as well. They'd run through a wall for him. The recruiting has been top notch, next level. And Freeman was going to get his own gig before long too. So it's a bit of a risk. It's a bit of a risk if you look at the coaches at Notre Dame who have gotten that job as their first head coaching job. No, it's not all been that successful.
Not especially.
But the program, as I think you pointed out on our last show, is definitely in a much different place now than it was when they gave it to the likes of Charlie Weiss.
Sure. But my concern is obviously his experience and his age. And, is this too big a job? Is this too much to handle given he's been a Power 5-ish? I mean, Notre Dame's not a Power 5 job, it's ish for a year, right? That, just the continuity thing, he's been there for a year-ish, right? It's not like he's Brian Kelly's longtime right hand who it's going to be seamless, right? He's new. So I am optimistic. I'm optimistic. I'd love to see who he hires. I mean, the fact that there's Tommy Rees there is a good start in terms of familiarity with everything. I don't, my assumption is it's going to be Tyler Buckner next year starting at quarterback.
One would assume, but
yeah,
a lot can change before then.
I do love continuity hires, and it's, they're not all going to work out in the long run. But if you look across the sport, especially at or near the top of the sport, it's that familiarity, it's that trust, it's the players willing to run through a brick wall for, that's a turn of phrase that I know you love. And look at playoff teams that, Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma and Dabo at Clemson and Mario Cristobal, not a playoff team, not this year, Mario Cristobal at Oregon. Like there is something about these Chip Kelly at Oregon. Like you look across the sport, and I know I used that Oregon example twice now, but across the sport, it has been, Ed Orgeron at LSU didn't work out. but he hit the ground running. He absolutely hit the ground running. Made, the Matt Canada hire wasn't great, but got it straight. Had a vision because he had the understanding of the place. And so I like it. I think Luke Fickell would have been a better hire, but I understand the Marcus Freeman thing. There is an unknown quantity to Marcus Freeman, and there is a exactly what you're getting quality from Luke Fickell. But I don't hate it.
There is also a little bit of a varsity blues feel to this, isn't there? With the playoff potentially getting bigger in the window, still very possible depending on what goes down this weekend. There is a quality of keeping the band together and trying to win in spite of the guy that left. Now, I don't know if there are hard feelings on the team among Brian Kelly. I listened to the leaked video that he gave, his farewell speech.
Right.
It didn't seem all that bad to me. I mean, it was what it was. Some of the players who have commented, at least publicly, seem to say the right thing. It's like, well, you got to do what's right for his family. And everybody says the right stuff. I don't know how they feel. I have heard that they don't feel great about it. I wouldn't doubt that they don't.
Right.
But to keep your coordinators, to keep a lot of the coaches in place, to know that there is still potentially a lot to play for. We could debate the merits of whether they should be one of the top 4 teams and what that means until we're blue in the face. But all that matters is the guys in that room, how they feel about it. And if they find themselves on that big stage, having those coaches, maybe having a little extra edge to play with. I don't know. It makes Notre Dame suddenly very likable in a way that, I'm a Notre Dame fan. So for me, I'm always going to root the team on.
You think they're going to appeal to they haven't had when was the last, have they ever had a cool coach? I say cool because he's 35. I have no concept of his personality, but obviously he's resonating with the recruiting trail and kids on the team. Is he cool? What is his personality?
I think he's very cool. He's
charismatic. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think not just that, but combined with the circumstances, keeping the band together, promoting this guy from within who's young and charismatic, it makes them very likable in a way that Notre Dame has not been likable by the people who otherwise would hate Notre Dame in quite some time. So in and of itself, it makes Notre Dame very interesting, not just in the short term, but absolutely in the long run as well.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. They've been signing top 10 classes these past couple years, and they were poised to do. I think they're like number 4 right now, something, or a week ago, whatever it was. I don't know if Notre Dame's had any decommitments or anything. And I know we're treading into a territory where recruiting is becoming like NBA free agency, where it's overtaking. And I don't want to get to that point because I just like the football games more than anything. But it's important. It's to deny otherwise is dumb. So yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating. I believe so. Look, they could make the playoff this year if a couple things break their way. I believe they open with Ohio State in the shoe next year, game 1.
Yep.
Welcome to college football head coaching, young man. I can say that because I'm 38 years old.
Right.
And they have Clemson as well next season, I believe. And they'll get Lincoln Riley and USC. Wow, I'm already getting tingly thinking about next season and what we'll have Brian Kelly at LSU, Lincoln Riley at USC, Marcus Freeman taking over at Notre Dame, Billy Napier at Florida. I'm trying to think, and now we'll have somebody at Oklahoma, be it, I don't know, Brent Venables, Skip Holtz. Who's to say? Who's to say at this point? But man, so
you could have a panic hire coming at Oklahoma if they don't name somebody soon. With everybody naming coaches around them, you could have a panic hire.
They'll get somebody really good. Oklahoma's a huge, huge place. But, it's musical chairs at this point, right? That like some guys have had a ton of interest and have used that to leverage an extension. And some guys have taken new gigs for a ton of money. And now Oklahoma are they left, looking for... Are they left with hat in hand? Whatever. Like it's going to be fascinating. So, oh God, I'm so bummed out, Ty, because it's about to get so much more Notre Dame in this stream.
Who we got?
Jess Smetana.
Hello, everybody.
What's up, Jess?
I'm spoken like DMs, but Jess Smetana, Notre Dame superfan, alumnus, Meadowlark Media. I don't know. I think she's living in 7 cities right now. Jess is all over the place.
I'm in Miami.
You're in Miami right now.
Yeah, it's very, very warm, Dan.
Jess is everywhere. Both, she's a talker now. She's a pro. I remember Jess way back when. That's how old I am. Jess
It was like 5 years ago, but yes,
it was
go
5
on.
years ago at SB Nation. But Jess, give me your reaction. You are deep in the Notre Dame weeds. I assume you have multiple anonymous message board accounts. Talk to me about how you feel.
I have around 6 right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited, Dan. I mean, I think this is pretty exciting. I
think so too.
I was hoping that they wouldn't leave Notre Dame fans hanging for a month and not decide to name someone.
It's
and
quick, right? It was quick.
Very quick. And
Yeah.
I think there's a reason for it, which is that they didn't want Marcus Freeman to go to LSU. I think that would have been crushing for Notre Dame fans. And I think it would have been terrible for recruiting and all the work that Marcus Freeman and the staff had done this year to get that recruiting class that everyone was so excited about for next season. So yeah, it had to happen fast, I guess. And here we are.
Can I tell you my favorite storyline? And this might only be a media thing, but
please.
So Bruce Feldman, who we all know and love, Bruce tweets out that Marcus Freeman is going to get the gig, and he credits Mick Ossoff. We were on the street. Jess, I heard you talking on that stream the other night. We both were on it. We both listened to it.
Yes.
And Mick was at that point saying, like I don't know Mick, but he's kind of going off saying this is going to happen. It's going to be Marcus Freeman. I don't know if Mick's got sources or not. He was right.
He was right.
I know. I could tell in the tone of your voice you were a bit skeptical at that point, as I think a lot of people listening were. But he got it right. It seems as if there was a lot of momentum right away for Marcus Freeman. That he's a guy that the players enjoy playing for. He's obviously been very, very competent on the recruiting front. And as soon as I heard that Rees was going to be the offensive coordinator, I knew it had to be Marcus Freeman. You're not going to bring over anybody if they can't pick their own offensive coordinator.
Yeah. And can you imagine if Tommy Rees had left Notre Dame for LSU? Like, this is a offensive coordinator who played quarterback for Notre Dame, who had been wildly admired by Ian Book and other people that he had coached on the Notre Dame team. And I think there were reports that Brian Kelly had reached out to him to join him at LSU. And I think that it would have had to have taken a lot for him to leave Notre Dame and to do that, because as you know, Ty and Dan, as college football fans, the Notre Dame fan base is not a very forgiving one. If you're Brian Kelly right now, you're probably not being welcomed back to many tailgates anytime soon, and to walk around campus and go to the grotto and walk around the Golden Dome. So it would have been really hard for me to picture Tommy Rees leaving behind a life of Notre Dame perks to go to LSU in such a fashion.
Do we think Notre Dame considered alternatives? Do we think this was, as soon as they heard wheels were in motion, do you think they were reaching out? Do you think they were gauging? Do you think there were Matt Campbell conversations internally, externally, Luke Fickell conversations? Do we think that, or was it just like, he's gone? This is the succession plan?
Purely speculation. I think there probably were some other people considered. I heard Luke Fickell's name a lot. I think Pete Thamel tweeted earlier that Luke Fickell was in the mix still. But the timing would just not have been good for Luke Fickell, right? Like, he's coaching a championship game on Saturday. He would have had to have left his championship bound team to come to Notre Dame, or wait until after potentially the playoff, which is December 31st. And the early signing period is in 2 weeks, right? So I don't know how that could have possibly worked out without some really hurt feelings in Cincinnati, or, waiting, I guess, which would have been some really hurt feelings by recruits and by Notre Dame fans.
See, I keep referencing the Swarbrick press conference yesterday morning, and I thought he came across as pretty earnest about it. But when he's saying in front of people, I don't keep a list. In case something goes, I don't keep a list. He knew Kelly was leaving, because when you work with somebody for a decade, you can sense the quote unquote restlessness.
Yep.
But I don't keep a list. He had a list in his drawer, in his top drawer underneath his work desk. And I think he knew that, timing you can't always control, right? But I think when they hired Marcus Freeman, they knew this was the guy on the rise. And what he did on the recruiting trail, it sort of was a hire that made itself.
Do we think there's a risk involved here? Like, I know everybody's optimistic, and I know they're pointing to, from what I've seen early on, they're pointing to things like recruiting, like how well Notre Dame's defense improved over the course of the season. He's young. This is a huge program. This is a huge job. He was at Cincinnati as a coordinator 11 months ago, whatever it was. And it's a lot of school. That's, like it's a big plate. It's a big Thanksgiving plate. That would be my concern right now, that a lot goes into the Notre Dame job. And the recruiting thing is great. Calling a defense is great. But now we're talking about day-to-day management of a warship of a program. Does that worry you a little bit?
It's Ben Stiller driving the V8 in Starsky and Hutch.
Correct.
I think it probably worries a lot of fans. Like you'd be kidding yourself if you weren't a little bit worried, right? But this is not the same program that Brian Kelly stepped into 12 years ago. It's a program that's consistent. They're winning 10 games a season. It seems like there's a sense of stability among the support staff. I think it will really depend on who ends up staying. Like if someone like Brian Polian stays, who has head coaching experience for Nevada, if he can stay and kind of help with clock management, game management, those sorts of things, I think that would be huge. But yeah, I think that was probably the biggest concern for a lot of Notre Dame fans behind Marcus Freeman being hired, was that he doesn't have head coaching experience. And the last time Notre Dame hired the hotshot defensive coordinator without head coaching experience, Ty, tell us all what happened.
No, I'm good, Jess. I'm really good. Lincoln Riley got to start somewhere. Dabo Sweeney took over at Clemson without any head coaching experience. It has happened before. Yeah. It's not unprecedented in college football. It would be somewhat unprecedented at Notre Dame. I agree. It's a huge program to take over without any experience, but I do think it's helpful that there is that sort of continuity in place here. Rees isn't leaving. He doesn't have to start over in terms of staff. He may want to start over in terms of staff. I don't know what kind of decision he was given in the process, but that being said, it does help to have kind of that safety net in place. It is a program that's been very stable. You say what you want about Brian Kelly, but they've won double digits the last 5 years. They're doing just fine. To have that kind of continuity, I think is pretty important. It won't be, just because of that, the same situation as it has been in the past, where you're bringing in somebody brand new, and fresh. Maybe Bob Davie would be a bad, a different example here, but otherwise it feels like it's an okay spot.
Yeah. It's not an age thing, by the way, for me. It's just that he's been there only a year, right? That like Kirby Smart was at Alabama for so long, takes over a huge job at Georgia, right? Like there is that element of like the rhythm of year over year, understanding how to fix things, how to hire, how to manage people. And he's not calling a defense anymore. He is dealing with everything within a program. And so that is the concern, that Notre Dame is a job, I think, befitting of somebody a little more tenured, but it could work. It could definitely work.
And I think the thing that worked for Brian Kelly the last 5 years was stepping back from play calling, stepping into more of a CEO type role, delegating those responsibilities to some really great coordinator hires. And so it'll be interesting if Freeman has a different approach. I assume he will. He's known for being really creative with scheme and having a say in X's and O's and play calling. So I don't know if he will take that sort of CEO approach, but there is a downside to that type of approach also, which I think you heard this week from Swarbrick and from some players, which is that like, yeah, we didn't really see Brian Kelly that much. Like he didn't really play the public role of Notre Dame head coach in a way that you'd expect. Like he really did only address the team in certain situations and kind of left everything to his staff. So if you trust the work that the staff has done over the last few years, then I think you trust them into taking that next step forward.
Fair enough. Ty, any stray thoughts that you want to know?
I got a lot of stray thoughts,
but like, what are some open questions right now? Obviously staff, and we heard about the strength coach sticking around. I think I saw somebody in the comments said
love a strength coach.
Elston is sticking around. He's the
defensive
coach.
Plays. Yep.
Yeah. He's going to be the interim coordinator. So we're yet to see who the defensive coordinator hire is going to be. Or what sort of staff changes are made, or Notre Dame's approach to it's now the vision mostly. I assume there's going to be say, and that's one of the issues with hiring a younger head coach, is he doesn't have the leverage to say this is my vision and this is what we're sticking to. Sometimes there's going to be outside influence that says, okay, you're the head coach, but this is how we do things around here. And so I'm I'm crazy curious about what the staff rounds out as, if Brian Kelly takes any more dudes to LSU, and what does Marcus Freeman in his mind say, like, this is actually my vision for the offense, Tommy Rees.
Well, that
These
was
are
going to
the
be
wrinkles
that
that
was going to be
now
my
that
answer.
I'm in charge,
That
I'd
was
like
going to be my
us
answer.
open it up. I'd like to see us run more of this, right?
Yeah, that was my exact answer, Dan.
Yeah.
Just because you've got the same people
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean it's going to look exactly the same.
Right.
It won't look that different.
No.
But there will be nuance. Just the
Sure.
same way there was nuance at the start of the year when you brought over a new defensive coordinator. Didn't quite work at first. He figured it out.
Right.
But there's been nuance throughout the course of this season, at least on defense, that I think Marcus Freeman has brought to the fore here. And I am curious to see. I think that's an open question for me. Frankly, I'm curious to see how long this continuity lasts, right? Like,
right.
Tommy Rees is going to be there for a year for sure. I don't know what the details of his deal are, but I know he's going to be pretty sought after if Notre Dame goes out there and plays really strong offense next year.
Yep.
So, what does it look like longer term? What does it look like longer term for Marcus Freeman? He's only 35. If he does well at Notre Dame, this is a guy who played in the league. This is a guy who played at Ohio State. Could it be a similar situation down the road if there are other programs looking for a coach? Is Marcus Freeman going to be one of those calls? I don't know.
Sure.
We'll see. So a lot of open questions, especially when you bring in a guy with such little coaching experience, but
yeah,
it's
Jess,
a risk. I like it.
What are your open questions? Like an hour in.
I have a lot of open questions, but I do have a stray thought, which I believe was the initial question. One stray thought that I had is we'll never know this for sure, but I wonder how many people Brian Kelly thought he could convince to go to LSU with him. And if that was part of his agreeing to go there, was thinking like, I think I'll be able to convince at least a couple of these guys. They're going to be offering a ton of money. It's an SEC job. Like, I don't think I'll have to start from scratch. But now it looks like his offensive coordinator and his defensive coordinator do not want to follow him to LSU. I don't know who else may follow him. I read a report that he tried to hire Tony Alford from Ohio State. Who said no.
Yep.
So as of now, it sounds like Brian Kelly will be starting from scratch. And I just wish like that was a bit of information that we could know, but I don't think we ever will.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just curious what his assistant Rolodex is, because as you guys both mentioned, that Brian Kelly was very good at, with the Brian Van Gorder exception. But if he made a mistake hiring a coordinator, he was pretty quick to fix it. And, Chip Long was good for a good amount of time until it just wasn't working out anymore. And certainly the Marcus Freeman hire, the Tommy Rees promotion, paid dividends. Notre Dame was a playoff team last year. They're 11-1. So I'm curious to see what Marcus Freeman's Rolodex looks like when you're that young and you haven't been that many places. Brian Kelly was around for a long time. He was at the coaches' clinics. He was, he was around the sport. He was watching film. He was networking like all of these coaches are, but he's considerably older than Marcus Freeman. And so he has he has them in his cell phone. They might not be picking up his calls right now, apparently, to work as assistants at LSU. But nonetheless, at Notre Dame, he was able to make some pretty savvy hires. So.
Absolutely. But, Marcus Freeman comes from Ohio State, Purdue, like places where there's if you coach in Ohio, like you somehow are 1 degree of separation from every coach who's ever existed in the NFL or in college. Right. So It's a great point. But geographically, like that gives me a little bit of hope.
All right. Fair enough.
I'm very optimistic, Dan.
I love it.
You can't crush. This could be a tremendous disaster for Brian Kelly, for Marcus Freeman, for me personally, for Ty, for probably not for you. I mean, I don't know what this.
You know what though? It is tremendous content.
It's great content. It
is tremendous.
Tremendous content one way or the other. If you're going to go down, at least go down in flames. And
I agree.
I think that's what gives me the most hope of all. If it goes down, if it goes poorly, it'd be a hell of a story.
Here, my whole mantra for 2021 was committing to the bit and just maintaining enthusiasm, right? Arkansas looks strong early. I'm enthusiastic about Arkansas. They lose 37-0 to Georgia. All right, it happens. I'm still in. And Arkansas was fun nonetheless. So I'm in on Marcus Freeman. I am really sad I don't get to make old Notre Dame jokes in the way that I was able to before. Now that they've hired a head
You got to
coach
throw that
who's
Moon River
younger than
sound
I
drop
am.
out, man.
I gotta
Their
throw
offensive
the-
coordinator went to college the same time as I did. He was the quarterback when I was a sophomore at Notre Dame.
Hold on, if he's 29, is that how old Tommy Rees is?
Yes, I believe class of 2014.
Class of 2014, which means he was born in 92.
That was the 6th
Ty
year
got
of this
married in
podcast, man.
1992.
That was
What?
That was the 6th year of our podcast.
Yeah, that was the 6th year of the Solid Verbal. We were out there with our talk boys, sending each other tapes. Yeah. No, it's
You're
wild.
right.
It's wild
You're
that I
right.
can't
Very
do it
young,
anymore.
very, very young staff. Shocking.
Jess, how many interview requests are you going to get in the next 48 hours?
That's a great question. I think if anyone listened to the Levitard show the last 2 days, they probably want nothing to do with me because I have just made a joke out of all of this. But to be determined. This is my first legitimate offer to actually talk about serious football.
I'll take it. Oh,
we got you.
This is the best. Yeah. What do we know how like the old folks are feeling about this? I don't say that like
I do. I have old folks as my parents who both went to
okay.
Notre Dame. I can tell you
Please.
they're very, very unhappy with Brian Kelly. They feel like betrayed by him. My dad on the phone earlier was like, why couldn't he just wait until after selection Sunday? I'm like, Dad, he doesn't care. He's not the coach anymore.
Right.
This isn't his team. Why would he stick around to do anything for Notre Dame if he's not going to be there next season? This doesn't matter. And he's like, but he could have. I'm like, Dad, he doesn't care. I'm sorry. It's like, you haven't been dumped like this before, Dad. I have. I can tell you. He doesn't care about you anymore.
There are fans of a certain age, Dan, that have an issue with all things really, and I know my mom is listening to this.
Of course.
I would count her in this category. No offense, Mama Age. Transfer portal, coaches leaving early, players either sitting out or leaving early for the draft. Those three things really seem to stick in the craw of a certain segment of the fan base. Doesn't matter what team.
Sure.
And so, yeah, absolutely, Jess. There are definitely people who have an issue with the way that Brian Kelly left.
It's the thing is that I don't think Brian Kelly was ever likable as a dude in the way that I think Notre Dame fans hoped he would be. I know, like Jess and Mike Golick Jr. and all the cool Notre Dame fans online were like, look, he's wearing boots. Look, he's kneeling on a knee. That was as cool as Brian Kelly got.
Well, that's why it was funny, Dan. Like,
sure,
it was funny because he was doing things that were like, what is he doing?
But ultimately, what Brian Kelly did was tell the people who came around to him and understand he's not the most likable, charismatic dude. What he did was tell all of those people, all of you Notre Dame fans, Notre Dame is not a destination job anymore, right? It was not just that he left. It was the statement that he made that LSU is better, a better place to be than, the hallowed grounds of the Notre Dame campus.
Do you think he said that though? You think he said that?
I don't know entirely if he said that.
When was the last time somebody chose to leave Notre Dame as a head coach?
I think there's strong subtext, absolutely, to suggest that that's the way he feels. And let's be honest, it is easier to win a national championship at LSU.
Sure.
That's just the state of the college football game.
I know Jerron did it.
Yeah. So I mean, I would agree with that sentiment, but if you listen to what Kelly said, at least publicly, he's saying it was a better opportunity. I was looking for a new opportunity after 12 years. Right. Okay, people can relate to that. They paid him a mint. People can understand that. Even if they hate the guy, they can understand that. He went in front of the team, told the team he could win a national championship. At least the things that he says publicly, he was always a pretty good politicker in front of the cameras.
Sure.
So it's not going to come across as a surprise to hear him saying those things. I don't know if he said it publicly, even if he believes that privately, but I think, honestly, it's mostly a creation of college football media to imply that he was sending those types of signals.
I think
it's not. I mean, it's actions, not words. I mean, he looked at Notre Dame and said, "This is the LSU job, and what they're going to pay me, and what my situation will be there is more appealing to me now."
I think he said that after coaching at Notre Dame for 11 years. Like, I think it's a different story if he coaches at Notre Dame for 2 or 3 years and then moves to another FBS Power 5 job. Like, to me, it's more of, I'm 60. I'm only going to have one more job probably till I retire. Is it going to be 4 more years at Notre Dame or do I want to try something different? Not necessarily better. It could be that. Like it definitely could be that. He could be like, I'm so sick of this shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast.
You are. It's the internet. Yeah.
But I'm tired of academic restrictions. I'm tired of South Bend, even though I'm building a brand new house here, apparently. I'm tired of all of it. I'm tired of the Notre Dame politics. I want to try Louisiana politics instead. But I don't know. I mean, after 11 years, it's hard to say like, yeah, he's on to bigger and brighter things, because 11 years at Notre Dame was perfectly satisfactory. He was very satisfied with it for that long.
I do think it gives permission to people who wanted to dislike him that were Notre Dame fans a little bit of relief. A real like, okay, I've been wanting to do this forever.
100%.
Like, right. And that's something. Also, on your previous point of like, he's gone, like you're talking about your parents, there is something about, I think Bud Elliott voiced this really well. Why even call the morning meeting? Like, you're gone. Your players are adults. They understand the situation. Nothing you can say to them is going to make it better. They might respect you more if you just go. You send the text that night. You're like, this is what I'm doing. Good luck with everything. And anybody who's ever been involved in a breakup knows all of those texts and phone calls after the fact, when it's done, you're just like, oh, there's nothing fun about any of this process. Can we just go? And
I don't know. I mean, maybe he had to get something out of his office, and he knew where it was hidden, so he just had to go back to the goo one more time. Maybe he just, wanted some closure. Maybe he felt like he owed it to them just to say it to their faces. I do get that, and like a lot of people were also like 7 a.m. really, but like these dudes have lifts every morning before their 9 a.m. classes. Like that doesn't really bother me that much. 2 minutes though, that's pretty short. It's pretty short. Not taking any questions,
to be fair,
not shaking anyone's hands, or like I just hit my computer trying to make a point. But yeah, I don't know.
To be fair, the leaked video to Barstool was at least 3.5.
3.5 minutes. So good times. All right. Jess Smetana, thank you very much for your time and for weighing in and for your happiness. I like college football happiness. So
I'm very happy right now. I'm glad I can get some rest tonight, knowing I'm not going to wake up at 2 a.m. to like a Twitter notification from Pete Thamel that something terrible has happened.
We hired Brian Van Gorder?
Brian Van Gorder. Jeff Hafley would have been mad. But all right. Field. Hey, congratulations. Like I told Ty's mom, who was on our stream. Ty's mom was on our stream the other night, and like I said, hiring a new coach is fun, right? Like there's a mystery to it. There's the recruiting. There's what does spring practice look like? What are the reports about Marcus Freeman as a head coach? Like there is something novel, and it's been over a decade for you guys. So
and it's a fun head coach that people genuinely love, and like the players genuinely love. And if they're happy, I'm happy, right? So that's what it is.
You guys get honeymoons. That's great.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll see how they do in the postseason.
That's true. Good luck. Everybody listen to Jess on the Lebitard Show, Metal Arc Media. Follow her. It's Jessica_Smetana, I believe, on Twitter. She's the best. Jess.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jess. Take care.
Take it easy.
Very fun to return to the Solid Verbal after years of hiatus. I'll see you guys around. Bye.
Love to have you back.
Care.
All right. See you later.
All right, Dan. So we got comments coming in. Let's put up.
God, do we? Yes.
We got some super chats here from Mike.
Oh, yeah.
You got it right here. There was nothing more fun than my 23-year-old self texting a ghosted number multiple times, asking to go to an opera. Bad decisions.
Yeah. We've all been there. We've all ghosted and been ghosted. I don't know if Ty has ghosted somebody. I don't know. You might be too nice. I have. I still feel bad about it.
I sort of have. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
He also sent us another one. I just enjoyed RJ Young tweeting that Marcus is young enough to have his own 24/7 player profile. Yeah. Wow. What a day to be alive. Okay. What else do we got here? Bring back Mama H. Maybe we will.
You texted her and you just sort of said, well, she doesn't know much about Marcus. She doesn't have a fully formed opinion of Marcus Freeman.
What did she say here? What did she say? I may call in. Shoot me the text. Shoot me the text. Okay.
Okay.
We'll see if she wants to hop on the line here. You want to take some other comments?
Sure. Let's go. It's fun to edit as we look, and we're about to put it on. A lot of people talking about LSU being a better program than Notre Dame. I suppose it's about fit, and LSU is certainly clearly more able to win national championships, but you have to want to live in South Bend. You have to want to live in Baton Rouge. There's a certain element of what is good for me, what is good for my family, what is good for my future. And LSU certainly has the higher upside and will definitely pay you if you're bad, which is the dream. It's always the dream. If you're bad at coaching, LSU will pay you. I mean, to not coach. Yeah. What else do we have here, Ty?
I saw somebody comment that Digger Phelps was a prick, which was just a fun comment.
Is that true?
I don't know. I have no idea. But what else do we got here? Okay.
I mean, people saying, guys, it's so simple, all caps, early recruiting period. It's a real thing. Now, look, if they were enamored with Matt Campbell, they would have forfeited, a chunk of the strength of this class. But that's a long-term decision to say Matt Campbell wants to be in South Bend or Luke Fickell wants to be in South Bend. The Luke Fickell, the wrench of Cincinnati pushing for a playoff berth and the timing of such is really, really bad. So you're really punting on this year's recruiting class. But yeah, I get it. It's totally real now that you have to make these types of decisions quickly and early.
What else do we got here?
Why didn't Kelly wait for Notre Dame to match pay? He wanted to go. When somebody doesn't wait, they just want to. They want to go. The money was great. The situation was great. In his head, and he was gone. He had checked out at whatever moment. Brian Kelly had checked out, and this was not him saying, "Should I? Should I not? Should I? Let's see what Notre Dame can." He just that wasn't in his head. He was ready.
And the other thing, I keep coming back to this press conference, but it had been reported even before Jack Swarbrick said it that he didn't even try to get a counteroffer. He was gone. He said, I'm leaving. It wasn't about the facilities. It wasn't about the pay. It was about a different opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at least as far as that goes, and I know people like to dunk on Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly did a good job at Notre Dame. I think of all the possible in the universe of possible reasons why he could leave Notre Dame, the one that is least inflammatory, which is not always the thing that Brian Kelly has chosen in the course of his career. The least inflammatory option was to say, I was just ready for something else. I've been here 12 years. Everybody can relate to that. Whether you like the guy, whether you, whatever. That's the least inflammatory excuse he could give. And, if it's true, I think it's at least somewhat relatable. So, no, I don't even think he tried to counter.
Steve, with a crazy professional looking avatar. Ty, now that it's settled, what were your next Notre Dame coach power rankings? Was Marcus Freeman in your mind, not like, will he become? It was personal preference. What was your order of potential candidates?
I like the risk of Marcus Freeman.
But was he your one?
Risk. I think he was.
Okay.
I like taking the risk. It is high risk and very high reward. If you hit with this guy, I think it has potentially a transformational quality to it.
Right.
He's young, he's charismatic. I love that aspect of it. He has certainly done a great job on the recruiting trail, and he's done a good job with the defense. Let's not look past that. Maybe not in the very beginning. It was definitely slow going early on, but he did a good job, I think, pulling this thing together and getting the most out of his defense in a big way. So I think for that reason, and to try and establish that continuity, Freeman was probably my number one, even though there's a huge risk there. 2, I guess, was Fickell. Like, I have this problem, and I had this problem when they hired Brian Kelly too, where Brian Kelly was not the sexiest hire that they could have gone out after, but he was the guy who wanted the job the most. And he wanted the job the first time they offered it to his predecessor, right? This is a guy, Brian Kelly, who wanted this Notre Dame gig for a while, and it worked out in that they gave him the job. He built the program slow and steady over the course of a decade plus, and now here we are talking about them winning 5 straight, double digits in 5 straight seasons and being on the precipice of another playoff berth. So there was that kind of quality to Luke Fickell in that he definitely was, I don't know if he wanted it more than everybody else, but Luke Fickell was maybe the unsexy hire that made a lot of sense and, nobody would think twice about.
Right.
I don't know. That kind of bored me. And maybe that's the wrong approach, but I like the high upside quality to the Freeman hire. I was mixed on Matt Campbell. I'm kind of surprised that Matt Campbell hasn't been hired away by somebody else yet. Maybe he'll get the Oklahoma gig. I don't think he will, but I was sort of mixed on that. I sort of underperformed this year. his stock is, I
Sure.
think, taking a hit.
But I
He
don't.
will get.
I
Go
think
ahead.
good ADs don't look at a coach as a product of a season unless it's disastrous and you can directly trace the reason for that disaster to him. I think good ADs say, look, everybody has weird years. Everybody has, a bunch of close losses and disappointment given what they returned. I get all of that. It was a disappointing year for Iowa State. I don't think 2021 defines Matt Campbell, capital D defines. So,
No.
yeah, it is a little strange, but it also might be he can afford to be at this point, given his leverage, he can afford to be choosy.
He can afford to be choosy, I think, and I think he will get another gig before long.
Yep.
But what's interesting about this, though, is that I felt like the universe of possible hires was very narrow. When
Right.
Notre Dame's come open in the past, you've heard everybody under the sun. You've heard the full gamut from Charlie Weiss to Tom Clements when he was still a thing coaching quarterbacks
Right.
in the NFL. I mean, really a pretty wide spectrum of names that could potentially be the next coach. Maybe it was timing. Maybe it was circumstance. There were 3 names that people mentioned. The Athletic tried to throw Mario Cristobal in the ring, which nobody even believed that, right? They were just kind of throwing a possibility out there. But it was really only 3 names.
Right.
And it was always Marcus Freeman, Luke Fickell, and Matt Campbell. And there weren't even creative names outside of those 3 that made any sense. So if I had to rank them, I'd probably rank them in that order. Freeman maybe by a nose over Fickell, if only because of the upside and because there's a continuity aspect to it that, it's a successful program you have to like.
Could have gotten a gritty 9-3 every year with Pat Fitzgerald that you're passing
Grit?
up.
No, I don't want Pat Fitzgerald. Do you want Mama H on the line, by the way?
We can do whatever.
I've
Sure.
got her.
I
I've got her on
welcome
the.
Mom H.
I've got her on the line now. Mama H, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, hon.
All right.
Nice.
So
And the audio's working perfectly right at the onset.
the audio's working perfectly.
I'm a quick learner.
Yeah, she's a quick learner. Okay, so you just became familiar with Marcus Freeman this year. The defense has taken a step forward. This was a quick hire for Notre Dame. Are you relieved that they made the hire as quickly as they did?
I actually am. I was fearful that they were going to wait. I thought it was going to be Fickell, but, after listening to everybody, and I kind of like this guy, and I'm going to be really happy that Daniel is not going to be playing that awful music.
First of all, it's wonderful music. Those are American standards, ma'am.
Yeah, it depends when you're playing it, Dan. Depends when you're playing it.
True.
No, I'm pretty relieved. I think I'm, you're kind of apprehensive because, the guy doesn't have a whole lot of experience, but I don't know. I think it's refreshing. It's almost like finally giving Notre Dame a new look with a young man. I think it's going to be fine.
I want to get your take on Brian Kelly talking to the team for like 2, maybe 3.5 minutes, because I know our conversations after most of the Notre Dame games, and you're the type of fan that not only do you watch the game, but you listen to all of the post-game comments deep into the night after a game. Like, that's just who you are. And so you had, more than anybody I know, really taken a liking to Brian Kelly. You were one of his staunchest defenders. And the second he decided to leave, you're like, all right, he's dead to me. You came on the stream a few days ago.
Did I just say that? I just said Notre Dame fans are relieved now that they get to openly dislike Brian Kelly.
So where are you at, Mom, emotionally?
Honestly, I was really disappointed. I was really disappointed in his 2-minute whatever. Didn't give any opportunity to the players to say anything. It just seems so cold. I don't know. For a guy who was there for as long as he was there and he loved Notre Dame, so on, blah, 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 it kind of seemed cowardly to me. I don't know. Now that he's gone, I'm ready to move on with something new, something young, something fresh. And
whoa, Mama H.
Settle.
Moving on to something new and young. All right.
No,
All right.
I think it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
By
the way, that young lady you had on, she was wonderful.
Jess is the best. Jess is a star now. She's wonderful. She works with Dan Le Batard in Miami and his burgeoning sports media empire, and she does a great job. And she went to Notre Dame. She is through and through Irish, and I think is the youngest Notre Dame fan I know. And so I'm like, all right, let's have Jess on. So
Knock it off,
glad you like
Daniel.
her. I don't know who do I know that's younger that went to Notre Dame. I don't know any. I don't know youth. I just happened to work with Jess a few years ago.
Good. She's good.
Yeah, she's very good. Catch her.
All
eye.
right, so give me your parting shot here. Parting shot on maybe Notre Dame now. In light of this news, they've got their coach. They're retaining a fair amount of the staff. They have an opportunity to go to the playoff if things break in their direction over the next 5 days or so. Leave the people with something they could sink their teeth into here.
Well, the thing is, I'm really delighted that most of the staff is staying. I think that says a lot. And, the recruiter, I mean, that's really important. I think Notre Dame's going to do fine. I'm looking forward to it. I think the youth it's a big change for Notre Dame, but I think it's going to be great.
All right. Mama H,
Hey,
thank
guys.
you.
All right, guys.
We'll talk soon.
All right, hon. Bye-bye.
We don't have the rights to this song, Dan.
All right, that was 3 seconds. Sorry. All right, I don't know if I have any parting shots.
I don't.
I will say, so I'm going to. I will say, I like when if a school is not going to hire an existing head coach, offensive line or defensive coordinator. To me, anecdotally, I like the hit rate, right? With Dave Aranda at Baylor, that's the only one I could think of right now off the top of my head. No, obviously Luke Fickell. Look, Luke Fickell at Cincinnati. I have a list in front of me. Nick Saban has a defensive background. He was not hired as a coordinator. Now Marcus Freeman, Kyle Whittingham, and his experience on defense. Mark Stoops, Pat Narduzzi. Like you go through. I mean, there's offensive coordinators as well, but you go through some schools and. I like the success, especially young, when you have two defensive coordinators, and Mom H is not on the phone anymore, so I will take off her graphic. But when you have the two defensive coordinators, this defense is about effort and buy-in, and you have two of those guys on your staff, which I think is what offensive line is about as well. Maybe it's a personal preference. I don't know. I like it a good deal. So
well, I approve the move. I like it. Again, Marcus Freeman, new head football coach at Notre Dame. There was speculation the moment that Brian Kelly left that it was going to be Marcus Freeman. Jack Swarbrick sort of said, nah, let's take our time making this hire. Let's pick the right guy. And then he picked the next guy 36 hours later. So there was obviously strong internal push, as our friend Pete Sampson had reported almost immediately, to hire Freeman. It's not just Freeman. They're retaining Tommy Rees. They're retaining their strength coach. They're retaining a bunch of guys from that current staff, hopefully with the intention of keeping the boat afloat, going in a good direction, and potentially winning a playoff game. At worst, they're going to be in a really good bowl game come New Year's Day. And, they'll have an opportunity to showcase what they're all about under Freeman. But depending on how things break this weekend, we could be talking about Notre Dame as the 4 seed in the upcoming playoff against Georgia, which would be, let's be honest, a very tough opening game for Marcus Freeman to start his Notre Dame tenure. But we'll see. Stranger things have happened.
Yeah.
That's all I got, Dan.
That's all I have. We will talk more about it on tomorrow's shows, plural. We have our Friday show. We'll have Bill Connolly on to talk all things, I don't know, college football. And I guess you'll ask him some soccer questions. And we have our Patreon only show in which we do a Q&A. We've got a bunch of great questions in already. So we will talk about Notre Dame further on that show for our Patreon Verballers, which the best of the best. Right?
Absolutely the best of the best.
Say about like Navy SEALs, right? It's just the best of the best.
The best of the best.
The 1%.
It's at verballers.com.
Yes.
And look, if you're just finding us, subscribe.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Subscribe button.
We'd love to
it's
hang.
Helpful. We're going to be doing more streams because there are more openings. The Oklahoma job is a big one. It's a big
Miami,
one.
ASU.
They still have yet to pick their guy. So when that happens, we'll be back here talking about that. Maybe bring someone on from Oklahoma to talk about it. We'll see. But a lot more to come here. The coaching carousel continues to spin. Who knows what happens after this weekend? Maybe there are going to be more jobs that open. It's just that kind of year. We'll see.
All right. That's all I have, Ty.
Dan, take care. Have a good night.
Hey, you too.